All right, everybody. It is Monday here in the beautiful city of Chicago. I'm Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, ChicagoJazz.com. And of course, this is Chicago Music Revealed. I am also the Director of Program and Entertainment at the Epiphany Center for the Arts, 201 South Ashland Avenue, opening soon. Hopefully everything is opening soon. This one's in particular will be opening soon. We got 3 different performance venues. We are looking forward to hosting a lot of you for live performances, blues, jazz, rock, Latin, hip hop, house, everything in between. It is going to be incredible. As soon as all of us can get together and actually see each other in person, it will be even more incredible. So part of the show that I've been doing here, Chicago Music Revealed, we've been talking about connecting the entire music industry, obviously. If you watched my interview yesterday with Sam Newsom, it was great. He's from New York. We've been talking to different people throughout the entire country and also right here in Chicago. And there is actually our guest, Dave Williams. He is kind of a little bit of both. He grew up in Chicago and in LA. An incredibly accomplished musician, performed with so many people I can't even start to. I'm gonna Bear, and there he is. Bear, how are you? Oh, I'm doing great, and I apologize for the little delay I had here, but I'm glad we started. So it's. I always say, we started at 6:17, but this is a music show, so we're all improvising anyway. So you know, when last time you went to a concert and a band started right at 8 o'clock? I can't remember. So exactly. Well, so it's a pleasure having you on. And before we get into your whole career and everything, I mean, you've got a record label. You've performed with, I mean, the litany goes on and on. George Duke, Rita Baker, I mean, Frankie Beverly, Boney James, Maeve Staples, just to name a few. So we will continue talking about all of this stuff because, I mean, we can go down a wormhole here for the next 4 hours, but we won't do that. Before we get started on everything, obviously, all of the gigs are canceled. We're not doing live performance. Right. And what are you doing? How are you getting through this time?
Well, Mike. As I was thinking this morning, as I got up and was showering, and everything, we've all become broadcasters, whether we liked it or not.
That's
We,
that's it.
that's what we're doing. So I'm learning. I'm learning OBS, the streaming
Yep.
program. I'm learning Facebook Live. I'm learning YouTube. And I'm just have to. I'm creating content. I'm in the studio in the house, creating content. But yeah, we've all become broadcasters, whether we wanted to or not. That's where we are now, and so it's a brand new frontier, and so I'm busy swallowing as many tutorials as I can, without my head exploding. But
That's right. That's right.
trying to have fun with it, because it's who knew. Who
That's
knew?
well, and
We had, I just talking about the pandemic. Everybody lost shows. Everybody lost a ton of stuff. Um, Interestingly enough, I'm the music with Frankie Beverly and Mays, and we were scheduled to start back our from our normal hiatus um, in March 28th in Orlando, and then we were heading out on Tom Joyner cruise of all things.
Oh man.
Yeah. With all of this coming on the pike, a few weeks before that, we're all like on needles and nervous as possibly be. Like, is this actually still happening? We can't go on a cruise. We just we can't do that.
No.
So it fortunately and unfortunately it got pushed aside, canceled, and so that's where we are. But I'm just at home creating as much content and as possible and learning new skills.
With all of the stuff that's going on right now, you tell me, because you're the perfect person to talk to because of everything you've done and the fact that you've got your record label, you were a studio musician for 25 years and everything else. But, I think the silver lining of this entire situation could possibly be is that a lot of musicians are going to figure out a different way to connect with their audience and to their music, literally just out of necessity. And then the ones that actually can figure things out and understand those little niches and how to figure out how to do stuff. And then when they can start performing live, I think some musicians are going to really find out that they really connected with even a larger audience and might help in the long run. But, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with Mike. This is a new frontier, and those of us that are brave enough to learn these new ways of doing this. Eventually things will get back to a normalcy of some sort.
Yeah.
But I think the difference, normal, we'll have a little normalcy, but that stuff that we're learning now, I don't think that's ever going away.
Right.
So we kind of have to kind of come up with a nice, delicate balance of view. I think people are, I think musicians and artists, going to have to, it's a paradigm shift that we're all having to deal with, but I believe what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, for somebody like you who's traveled all over the place, I've talked to different musicians that tour nationally and internationally and all that stuff. And I remember last week I talked to Bobby Broom, a world-renowned guitarist, and I asked him the same questions that I'll ask you. But I mean, have you ever been in a situation with all your travels, all of the different things you've done in your career, that's even close to being as similar as this one, where like everything is shut down? Because every once in a while there might be a plane delayed or a plane canceled or a gig canceled because of weather or something, but nobody can work at this point. And I can't even think of anything similar to this.
No, Mike. There's nothing. We've never. I've been in this professionally for 7 years. I'm dating myself here, but but no, never, ever did I look down the pike and see nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny when this whole thing started, and I'm listening to the news, and I'm saying to myself, and they're starting to shut things down, and they started to shut down. I think it was actually the first thing I remember them talking about. The new XFL,
yep.
Which I love. I'm a football fan.
Yeah.
Crazy football. Go Bears. Go Bears. But they started when they pulled that off. When they pulled the basketball stuff off.
Yeah.
When they did the season and those guys are test positive and stuff, I was like, oh crap! There are a bunch of crowds there. What is live music about? It's the lifeblood of live music is crowds. I'm like, oh man, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Trouble.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. I mean, I've told a lot of people, and I'm sure you probably agree. I mean, even during the financial crisis in 2008, there was still business for us. There was a club open. Right. There was a venue. There was something happening.
Exactly.
There's something just so odd that it just stops. And it's like, who would have thought the entertainment business would have been this vulnerable to anything? I mean, it just, it does compute, but this is, something that I think we're all going to have to figure out how to maneuver around for a very long time, because it's not going away tomorrow. But, to your point with the different you're doing and learning how to broadcast, and all of us are turning into broadcasters, I think the ones that take it seriously and learn the craft, it'll just enhance things once you start out of it,
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about your background. You grew up in Chicago. And, looking over the bio that you did, and before we even get to because I want to, you ended up in LA. I mean, you actually went to Howlin' Wolf's funeral, and I don't think you knew that you were going to Howlin' Wolf's funeral, but your band director told you to go your respects. What was that like? It's fascinating to me that you got to go to such a funeral like that. And I'm sure it was, if he would have passed away in this day and age, it would have been way different than it did then in the 60s. It might have made sort of an impression on you.
Yeah, my band director, a shout out to John High School on the South Side. He came into school and looked over the and those of you curious, just up the street at our League Funeral Home, there's a man lying in state that you go pay your respects to. He didn't say who it was. Mm-hmm. He just talked. We assumed because we're doing music that it had to be someone musical. So just a couple of guys. So we went after school and walked in the league, and it's a funeral home, so we go, there's people there, there's mourners and the whole thing, and we're I'm like 16, 17 years old. Walk up to the front, I acknowledge the family, the bereaved family in the front, and I go up to the casket and I look down in the casket, pay my respect, walk out, and I see the book and I leave. And so it was a couple of years later, because I guess I didn't have presence of mind to walk to Mr. Hunter. Who
was that?
Who was that? But I just saw the book. But I remember and I got a card in the mail, And oh man, if I had only kept this stuff. I mean,
Oh,
it was like, thank you much for, blah blah blah. The family, Chester A. Burnett.
yeah.
That was it. They didn't even put the Howling on. It was just Chester A.
Wow.
Burnett. And
Oh,
it was a few years later that I was like, oh wow, that
that was how.
that's yeah. I mean,
Wow.
that's the giant. I mean, outside of
Mm-hmm.
Muddy Waters, in this town, I mean, that's it don't no bigger than that guy.
Right.
So it was awesome. It was an interesting, it was a weird moment, but then later on, and then coming full circle, we'll talk, of course, I'm sure later, coming full circle back around, it kind of makes sense that I was in his presence at that moment.
Yeah. Well, I
Mhm.
mean, so you must have known you wanted to be a professional musician or at least do something with music at that point, right? I mean, in
Yeah.
your
Oh
teens, in
yeah.
your high school. So, I mean, how did that continue? Did you start playing gigs around Chicago before you, I mean, headed out? I mean, were you studying with somebody? How did that whole thing happen?
Well, I was basically taught. Well, I started piano at age 5,
Oh, okay.
and that was because my aunt raised my two brother. I'm sorry, my brother, my two sisters. They're all older than me. I was the one that ended up with the piano lessons because Ramsey Lewis was being in the house, and
Mm-hmm.
so for some reason or other, I remember it was Wading in the Water and Ramsey Lewis Trio, and for whatever reason, we had the piano in the house, and I think my sister Diane who had gotten piano lessons, and she lost interest, and so the piano was just sitting there collecting dust, right? And
Yeah.
so um, here this song comes on. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
So I'm 5 year old little kid starts to climb up on the piano bench and starts to try to bang what he hears, And so my aunt Ruby, God bless her, she recognized that. Oh well, heck, well maybe we'll give him the lessons, and so that's how that started.
Wow.
And from there, um, my patience wore thin because I took piano lessons from a private teacher on my block, and then I also took lessons at Line and Healy downtown
Oh, yeah, sure.
Chicago,
Sure.
and I took them for a few years, about up to age 10 or so. And I was like, okay, when do I learn how to play like Ramsey Lewis?
Right.
you know?
That was my problem. I play drums and I'm sitting there
Yeah,
playing like these lame tunes. I'm like, I don't want to play these lame tunes, man. What is this?
exactly.
Good, I'm not
Exactly. I'm
alone.
like, okay, when do I get this hip stuff? Come on,
Right.
man. So I dropped out of that. And then about a year or so later, Jimi Hendrix came into view for me.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, man, that's what I want to do. That's hip. So I went to Aunt Ruby. I said, can I have a guitar? She was like, yeah, no, we saw how the music lesson, the piano lessons went. We'll see about that. So that was a while. It was a while before I ended up getting my first um, guitar. The first guitar that I got was my brother Maurice had a serial overtone 6 string at his
Oh,
apartment,
yeah. Okay.
and he wasn't play. He fooled around with it. He, actually, family's musical, but nobody went into it but me
Mm-hmm.
professionally. But um, he had this thing at the house, and he's like, you know what, take it with you. Just I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, take it. It's just collecting dust. So I got it. Then my sister Diane, I think it was Diane again. She got me the Superfly soundtrack album at like 12. And so I'm sitting there on the bed. I got the little record player going, and then I'm trying to pick out the guitar parts on the record, but all I can hear is, is Chicago's own, the late great Lucky Scott playing boom, boom, boom,
Mm.
boom, boom. I'm like, oh, okay, wait, this here, it changed my life. And so I instinctively, I guess, I took the top 2 strings off the guitar, and that was my bass. That's how I taught myself how to play bass. And then I
Wow.
ended up getting a somewhat of I call him my sensei, mentor, late great bassist, Chicago guy by the name of Thomas Palmer. nicknamed Tyaz, and
Mm-hmm.
he played with Ramsey Lewis. He um, played with Morris Jennings,
Yep.
in with Ramsey Lewis's band, and Herbie Hancock. A lot of different session stuff he did. So he was the one that turned me on to Jaco Pastorius and different things, and just
Yeah.
handle myself professionally in the studio and stuff. So when I got with Tyaz, he really made me laser focused on what I want to do. I kind of wanted to be a musician, especially when I got into high school and under George Hunter's wing. But then when I got with Tyaz, sitting down with him, I was like, yeah, this is definitely where I want to go. So.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were in Chicago around that time, or when you were starting
Mhm.
to learn after high school before you went to LA, was the video scene still happening here in Chicago? Because I mean, it was still, you could still make a living recording, right? There's a lot of jingle work. There was a lot of things like that. A lot of recording still happening in Chicago at that point, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was still Record Row was still
Yeah.
here. It was it was going away, but it was still here. So I got to record at Brunswick. I got to record at for Shy Sound Records, for Universal up in there. So yeah, those guys were still session work. People like the late Danny Leake, who just passed away.
Sure.
God bless him.
Yeah.
He was one of the top rhythm guitar players at that time. Byron Gregory, also great guitar player. All those guys, Morris Jennings,
Yeah.
all of those cats were just. They were going from session. They were doing like they were doing in L.A. They were going session
Mm-hmm.
to session, and that was still going on at that time. So
I
it
remember
was it
uh,
was great.
I remember Mo Jennings telling me about that because we talked before it came on, and he would let me sit in when I first came back from college, and
Mm.
he would tell me about the back when there was recording stuff happening in Chicago, and God, he must have been on over 1,000 jingles and recordings, I'd imagine,
At
over the
least,
years.
at least,
I
at
mean,
least.
that's how
The
much
human, the
that's how
human
much was happening.
metronome.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I know. And he would never look like he was paying any attention either. He'd just be like, "Oh yeah, whatever," and he was just laying it down. It was like, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So how'd you? So you're playing around town. You're starting to play gigs too, right? Starting to play out and things
Mhm,
like that.
mhm. Yeah.
How did you end up deciding to go to LA? Were you playing with someone here and just said, you know what, I know enough people in LA, I should head to LA because it seems like the scene is even more lucrative than being here.
Yeah, well, how all that happened, I got to back up just a little bit. The reason I
Okay.
started doing the gigs in town and the session work was because of George Hunter, my band director in high school. He was a woodwind player that played on a lot of records in town, and so he's the one that put me in under his wing and showed
Mm.
me, and introduced Tom 84 and to Carl Davis and Sonny Saunders and all of those guys that were doing the records. And he said, "Hey, this young kid, he's good. He's playing pretty well." So they gave me the shot, and so I started working on records with Gene Chandler and Jerry Butler and Shirley Bassey and those people. So and so on the live shows, he had a band, big band called George Hunter and the Moonlighters, and the reason they were called the Moonlighters was because they were teachers, doctors, and lawyers, but all very accomplished jazz musicians.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a great tutorial, if you will, live tutorial. 16 years old playing bass with
Yeah.
these cats that are really doing so. I got to see how men, real professionals, acted on the shows and the gigs and how things were, how they handled. So it was a great lesson. Oh, sorry, would you say?
That's the thing. A lot of students when they're in college and they're going to music school and they're doing all this stuff, get out, and you have to have those experiences because you don't learn the stuff we're learning. You don't learn that in music school, man. Being on a bandstand with the Moonlighters, right? All of these accomplished
Yeah.
musicians and stuff. I mean, these guys knew how to handle a gig, knew how to do stuff. So you're learning this at 16, 17, 18. I mean,
Right.
that's an education right there. You can't pay for
Yeah,
that.
it is. It really is. It is. So yeah. So there, um, I got started getting work with some local acts and stuff outside of George Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one really break me, and give me an idea of where I wanted to go from there was the legendary Phil Upchurch. I got to work with Phil,
Oh yeah.
and he was that revelation. for me, because he, was just so intense on the bandstand, very serious in his music, a jokester, but very, very serious about his craft. And everyone around him felt that. And so, so I'm like, oh, this cat means business. I got to look down.
Yeah.
And so he, we started working together for a couple of years. I recorded with him one album that did. And from him, Bobby Lyle, the great bass player, composer, was coming through Chicago to play. I think he was playing a gig at the Green Mill, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And he needed a pickup band, and so he called Phil. I'm coming through. Who do I get? And he referred me to him, and so I get the phone call. Hey, Larry Campbell. Hey, this is Bobby. How are you? Yeah, okay. The genie, really, for real. But it was him, and he said, "Listen, I'm coming through Chicago. I need a band. Can you put it together for me?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely."
Yeah.
So we ended up trying to remember who played drums with him. Oh, wow. That's right. He already had the drummer. It was Michael Baker, great Michael Baker, played Houston for years.
Yep.
It was Michael Baker. It was myself on bass. Had oh gosh, who else? Perry Hughes, I think, from Detroit on the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And I hired James Perkins on sax. And I'm trying to remember. Yeah, there wasn't another keyboard player. So it was me, James.
Yeah.
And also Ernie might have played drums too at one point when Michael wasn't able to. I think so. Yeah. But anyway, we did those, and they went off so well that he hired us to tour.
Oh, wow.
The country with him. Yeah. So that first, second foray, if you will, into touring the nation and internationally, because the first one was obviously with the Staple Singers. I did that for 5 almost.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, but a long way around to get to the LA thing. I was playing with Bobby and Blake, and he invited his former boss, Anita Baker, to the concert.
Uh-huh.
She heard me play. She and her husband were there. They heard me play. I was introduced to them after the show, and I'll never forget, Jonathan Butler actually opened.
Oh, wow.
I'm working with later on past, but they were just the six people, and at the end of the show, her husband, my whoever next player, please think of me, look me up.
Yeah.
And her husband, Walter, looked at the card, he looked back at me, oh, wow, okay, cool. We're actually getting rid of our bass player. So, the timing couldn't have been more perfect. And so it was sometime later. I was still living in Chicago. About 6 months later, I got a call from Sherwin Bash, at the time her manager. Hey, Anita has suggested you for her world tour, Compositions World Tour. Would you like to be a part of it? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Let me free up my schedule. Wow, man.
Yeah, and so we did that, and then there's all these little threads. But anyway, all of those guys in that group, one of the guys, the musical director for that group at that time, Chicago's own Ray Fuller, with the Weeper guitar player, killer guys. That's my boy. That's my brother. But the other guys, I didn't know. I'd heard of some of them, like Doc Gibbs on percussion and different people, Rayford Griffin on drums, but we weren't friends. After we got through with that tour, those cats were like, man, you got to come out to LA, man. You'll work, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, I'm thinking about it. I'm still hesitant, though. I'm like, no, but okay, if all right, you think I can make it? Okay. So I went back home and went back to Chicago and was sitting around kind of twiddling my thumbs and, and I was thinking at my then wife, and I was like, you know what? Wow, what do you think? And she's like, well, let's try it. You can always come home.
Right.
So, we went out and kind of the rest is history. It all just kind of started to flow from there. And yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, that's one of those things too. I mean, you're touring the world with Anita Baker, and then you come
Yeah.
back to Chicago, and to have those experiences, and then you come back to Chicago. I mean, what are you going to do? Go play at I mean, what are you going to do? Go play at the Green? I love Dave Gemolo. No offense. Go play at the Green Mill, or do you want to get on another tour? You want to do some more stuff? And
Exactly,
especially at
exactly.
that point, I think. I mean, until recently, I'm not sure. I think you needed to be on the West or the East Coast. And, maybe 15 years ago, maybe is when things started changing because of the internet and because everybody knew everybody and you get pulled
Hmm.
out on a tour living in Chicago. But I think back then you needed to go out on the coast, right? Because that's how you met people and that's where all the work was kind of creating to go on those tours.
Right, right. Yeah, you were either on the West Coast, the East Coast, or down in Nashville trying to
Yeah.
break into that
Yeah.
tight knit little group, which was, as they say, pert near impossible. you know, yeah. So I had to go either west or east, and so I chose west, and ended up, getting called back for Anita's second tour.
Mhm.
I was out there about 6 months into my time being there. Got the call from George Duke, who was a friend of his, and that whole connection. And
Yeah.
my first record that I played on out there was with George and the
Wow.
late and new Chancellor, Paul Jackson Jr. on guitar, and
Wow.
myself on upright bass. And there was a Japanese project that he was doing.
Mhm.
And so there, I did, 6 or 7 solo albums with Jim, toured the world with him,
Yeah.
off and on for 20 years up until his,
Yeah. Man, oh
and so
man.
from that tree, as Wolf, not Howlin' Wolf, but as Willie Dixon would say, all of those, just from that tree, just kind of, all of that George Duke tree, it just blossomed with Michelle Farrell, from Jonathan Butler, David Sanborn, Diane Reeves, Al Jarreau, all
Yeah.
of these great people, Billy Cobham, of course,
Hmm.
with George Duke, Billy Cobham thing. So many, many things came from that. Many experiences came from just being in that George Duke camp. And so I can't say enough about that guy. He was so open and such a sweet, kind, no ego whatsoever. You would think with all of his accomplishments, his abilities on that instrument, that he would be, just the nicest cat, man. He loved pasta and he loved espresso. You know, So I love him to death. I miss him, man, so much.
Well, and also, I mean, to be, you connected with these people because you connect with one person, and then another person, and then another
Yeah,
person, and then
yeah,
another person,
yeah,
and then it grows out, and then, as you said, the George Duke tree, right? Because all those
yeah.
other people are around that. I mean,
Right.
and as you're playing and as you're learning music, I mean, what kept pushing you? Obviously, was it maybe because you had to learn the music for a specific or specific gig, and then you went down other roads and you learned this style, that style, or what it was? Or were you just constantly consuming music and constantly consuming so that your playing kept getting better and better? Because I mean, a lot of guys that'll go out on a tour and they're on a tour for 20 years and they know the tunes and it's no big deal. And, fine,
Hmm.
I can play the tunes. It's no big deal. There's no reason to continue to practice or try to get better or try to do any recording or anything else because I got
Hmm.
this cushy gig. So what keeps you motivated creatively?
Um, Great question. Yeah, I just kind of, I knew that the competition was, in LA. I knew it was, I mean, I'm going up against, first of all, guys that are already well established. I'm going up, my competition is Nathan East and Neil
Yeah.
Stubbenhaus and Freddie Washington and
Right.
people like that. So I'm like, you got to bring the A game out here. You gotta bring the A game. You gotta be up on your stuff. You gotta leave the ego at the door. You gotta really know your stuff.
Yep.
And you really have to hone your craft. It's not
Hmm.
just enough to be a good or a great bass player. It's a whole encompassing thing. It's about personality. It's about timeliness. It's all those intangibles. Being able to navigate different personalities and different styles of communication and all of that. It's a really it's a balancing act that you have to to learn to do in order to be at that level and to stay there consistently.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it was a thing that I just made up my mind, you know, this is what I got to do. If I'm going to be up against guys, I got to be as good or better than these guys are. And
Yeah.
so that's, you know, God, I think I accomplished a little bit of that anyway. So,
I certainly think so. I want to remind everybody we're
thank you.
listening. I'm Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, ChicagoJazz.com, and Chicago Music Revealed, which is what you're listening to every day at 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And we are talking with Bear Williams, who is What Stories. And I'm so glad we got to connect with you because, I mean, you know,
Likewise.
as I said at the outset, we could talk for 4 hours about your career. Before I get into you coming back to Chicago, I always am curious. I was talking to John Prine last week, and I was curious
Mm-hmm.
from his standpoint because, you know, he played with Muddy, he played with all these different guys as sidemen, and then, of course, he started running
Yeah.
his own group. But
Right.
for you, you're in these things, and you're playing with, you know, world-renowned artists as well. What was the process that you went through? And I always like to talk about this because myself as a musician, I think an accomplished musician or even a beginning musician would find this fascinating. When you get the Anita Baker gig, let's say, you get the Anita gig and you walk in and they're like, okay, what's the process that you have to go through to learn their repertoire and to be able to walk out on stage? Because, you know, maybe there was a rehearsal or two, but I can't imagine that you guys were sitting in the studio for, you know, 3 weeks learning all of her repertoire. So what was your process? How would you handle learning music for somebody who is so well known and they have their own sound and you have to, you know, accompany them? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what's your process with that?
Well, for that one, interesting enough, yeah, I got the music in advance of a few weeks of the rehearsals, the production rehearsals, and started learning that. I mean, she had her what she wanted to do on the tour,
Mhm.
so we knew that in advance, and so you know they got to L.A. excuse me, and then they put us up in the hotel. Um, we rehearsed for 6 weeks before this tour.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so it was a you know because there was production, there was lights
Mm.
and sound, and we had tuxedos on, and the whole you know it
Yeah, the
was a
thing.
beautiful you know
Yeah.
there was Tool and all kinds of stuff, you know it was beautiful. So you know marble steps and the whole deal, you know, and so they had to you know work all that stuff out. So it was a definite big production, both the tours,
Yeah.
and with that being said, but you know you come in with something you want to do and being tracked and recorded by Freddie Washington and Denise.
Right.
Those are the two guys that I'm you know I'm emulating, if you will.
Right. Right.
So my process for that is I'm going to listen to everything that they've done, and I'm going to key in on every nuance that they're doing. And if it sounds important to me, to the music, I'm going to rip that.
Mm.
I'm also going to not just mimic them, I'm going to bring myself into the music. So I'm going to try my best to take it to another level, to take it where they take it here. Now live, it's up to me to take it
Yeah. Yeah.
up a notch,
Exactly.
you know. So that's kind of the mindset going in. That's kind of always been my mindset, you know, with whatever group that I'm working with, to
Mm-hmm.
take what's given me, and honor that, honor the music, you know, honor the what's been laid down, but then also kind of elevate it. If as if like a cooking word, you know, they say, yeah, I'd like to elevate that a little bit more, you know, elevate the hamburger to a new height, you know.
Yeah.
But that's what you're doing. You know,
Yeah.
you're elevating the music, taking what's there. Okay, I got this. Great. Perfect. Got this down. Now, how can I make this better?
Yep.
You know, how can I make this stuff really pop live? Because that's what it's all about. So that's been my mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's been it.
Because you got, I mean, when you're doing those gigs, I mean, you're doing exactly what you said, and then you want to make sure you put your own voice in there in some
Right.
aspect of it, right? And
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
think that's the difficult part because unless you can find that fine line where you're really making it all sound exactly the way they want it to sound, and then you can add your little extra thing, which kicks it up a notch, as you said, and
Mm-hmm.
that's your voice. I don't know how many people can actually do that successfully. Obviously, you can. That's why you get in calls, and that's why you continue to play like that. But there's that little fine line. I mean, it probably takes a little bit. You've got to be confident in what you're doing and never worry about what you're doing because you know you should have the gig and play that gig, and then you can add your stuff in there. I think sometimes maybe people are just hanging on for dear life because they got the gig and they're like, okay, I just don't want to screw anything up, you know, and that's usually the pure recipe for not having the gig anymore, probably.
Right, right, right. Yeah, no, that's true too. That's true too. You
So,
know, it's funny. I was listening to I think it was your interview with Chuck Webb,
yeah, yep, yep.
who was a buddy of mine. Talking about all those guys that were at the audition for
Oh,
Miola and how
yeah.
they were, everybody was sharing music and doing all this stuff and how it all came down to his feel.
Yeah.
We know you can get the notes, but how his feel was the important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a big part of it. It's how you're feeling, you're making the music feel. So I agree 120% with Chuck. If it's not feeling good, what's the? I mean, as Drew say, whatsoever it is, it's got to be funky. So it's got to feel good. It's got to feel good.
That's
Because
awesome.
if it doesn't, then you're missing that connection. You're missing that connection with your audience.
Yep.
That you're so desperate trying to make and create, and it's a magical thing, and that's what we're all missing right now.
Yeah.
In this pandemic, is we're missing that give and take, that wonderful vibration that happens when great music meets a receptive audience. It's there's nothing like that.
No, you're right. And that's where a lot of the live streams, you just can't, you can't recreate that. You just
No.
can't recreate
Yeah.
that. So let's talk about how you came back to Chicago. And also,
Mhm.
your name is Bear Williams, but it wasn't always Bear Williams. So I want to talk a little bit about how Larry became Bear Williams and how you ended up
Right.
coming back to Chicago.
Yeah. So about 5 years ago, I I was in a place where, okay, well, I was just gonna be decided to come back. I was like, okay, I've kind of done everything that I wanted to do here, in LA.
Is it easy to get
And
burned?
also,
Is it easy to get burned out in LA? I mean, is it just kind of like after a while, is it like, all right, the traffic and all, it's just like, man, I mean, let's go to Chicago just for a change of pace, and it's just a different vibe. Yeah.
well, first of all, I do need to say I actually came back originally to marry my high school sweetheart.
Oh, okay.
Hi Dee, I love you. But anyway, that was the major motivation for moving back. My family was here. A lot of my family's here, both sides of the family. Them, weddings and births and and funerals. So much being there. So I started to weigh reward versus what I was missing.
Mm-hmm.
And with the rekindling of my high school sweetheart, went to prom together and military ball, all that stuff, and with the rekindling of that relationship, it was like, okay, do I? Because we toyed with the idea of her moving there,
Okay.
but we were like, she'd have to give up so much,
Mm-hmm.
because she is herself. In addition to doing my business management, she's also an accomplished opera singer herself. She's studying at Northeastern University.
Mm-hmm.
She works full time there as well as a office administrator for the College of Business and Management. She's busy. She's busy as a cat covering up with one paw. But so that was my major motivation. And when I came back, I had started, before I left LA, I had started some blues-based projects,
Mm-hmm.
with some dear friends of mine, Ricky Zaharadez on guitar, Herman Matthews on drums, Texas boy,
Mm-hmm.
North Texas boy as
Yep.
well, and Bill Steinway on keyboards. And so that music he recorded a few years earlier became the catalyst for the reinvention of Compel into who I am now, which is Bear Williams. Now the name Bear is my name is Dee's nickname. That's that's what that is. So,
Okay.
oh, you're my Bear. So that was cool, and it fits.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was like, I said Larry Kemphill. I don't know if that does what it needs to do for a blues artist. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so I said Bear. That's that. And then in order to honor our mother, our mother's maiden name was Williams.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go, Bear Williams.
Yeah.
And so I started, calling up a few friends and, say, hey, what do you think about that name? People were like, I like it. I like that. Cool. Very cool. So it just kind of stuck. So 4 years later, 4.5 years later, here we are. Bear Williams was born. So,
cool. Good. And
you
got 2 recordings out now under Bear Williams, right? And
yes.
and it's underneath your own record label. You started a record label, GVR. What's GVR stand for?
That is God's Voice Records, actually. So it's God's Voice Records.
Yeah. So talk about, you play all of this different music. Why did you come back to the blues? What was it that brought you back to the blues? Because, somebody like you who's playing, George Duke, first of all, and everything else doesn't mean you can't play that on your blues gigs, obviously. You're coming back. Now you're playing blues. What brought you back to that style of music?
I think it was something that I was missing. It was just a piece of my story that I wanted to tell.
Mm-hmm.
The music was so prevalent when I was growing up here that it was just something that was in me, and I think it was just a natural transition to come back to the organicness. Jazz is organic too.
Right.
It moves and breathes and lives and changes and morphs and all that. Good jazz is supposed to do that.
Right.
So does blues. So does the blues genre. It should move and grow and evolve and change. And so I love that organicness about it. I love the simplicity of it, and I love the stories of it. I'm a huge country and western fan. The story they tell. So the blues very similar in those, stories of triumph, tragedy, drink, art, whatever, life stories. So that was intriguing to me, and it kind of brought me back. I was like, okay, let me stand on this music, again, while paying off to those that came before me, but putting my own up on it. So.
Well, and looking over to the different videos and up on your website, which should mention, and that's BearWilliamsMusic.com, and that's where they pick up the 2 pieces and find out about everything else you have going on when everybody has something going on, hopefully very soon.
Yes, exactly.
But you're at Buddy Guy's. I know you play at Rosa's, Buddy Guy's, a whole list of the blues places here in Chicago specifically that I'm talking about. Yeah. But with Buddy Guy's on stage with you on some of those recordings there, and he's there, and there's the legend, right? He's one of the last living legends, that connection to the past. Have you known Buddy for a while? Is that a connection that you had before you even went before you left town, or is it a reconnection?
No, it's actually a connection.
Oh, good.
We didn't know of each other, before. I knew of him, of course.
Sure.
But when I came back and started working with at his club, shout out to Mark Maddox and the whole gang, the Guy family. Gives a shot to get in there and become a staple, at the club. That's when I met him, and just in awe of the guy. He's just, everything that he's done. It's just, when you walk upstairs to the dressing room in the club, there's all this memorabilia all over the club, but upstairs in the dressing room area and the offices, there's all these things on the walls and just all this history, all this blues history. It's like, wow, this cat is just amazing. It's an amazing body of work, and so you feel honored to stand on that stage. I'm sure it's likened to people going to perform at the Apollo Theater in New York. It's for me, it has that same kind of a hallowed respect. You have to have that respect for that stage, as well as shout out to Tony Manguillo over at Rosas, and Johnny over at Johnny's Blitz in
Yep.
Westmont.
Yep.
They're all trying to do the same thing. They're all, paying homage to that past, present, but there's an honor there,
Mm-hmm.
in that music and that the blues family, so yeah. But I did not know, Buddy, before I came back. So it's great to have him,
Oh
in
yeah.
my life,
Oh yeah. Well, and just before we wrap it up, but since we're talking about Buddy, and I just can relate back to any of the blues artists, any of the legendary blues artists that but also go to the jazz, go to the R&B, go to any of them. They don't all like one style of music, and
Right.
most of them all can play a lot of other styles of music. I know Buddy in particular. I know he's a Wes Montgomery and everybody else, when you start talking to him about stuff, he can talk to you about that stuff for 3 hours without even thinking
Sure.
about it. So I think that's one of the things that people don't realize, and probably one of the things you bring to the table, because you're playing blues, but I mean it's Bear Williams blues, which is a combination of, like you say, country mixed in with some funk, mixed in with some R&B, mixed in with blues tradition. I mean,
Yeah.
and these albums that you have, talk a little about the two recordings you have. I mean, did you write most of the music on there? How did the inspiration come to start recording this stuff in that genre?
Yeah. Well, very quickly to say that.
Yeah.
Shout out also to the Mighty Quinn over at BuddyGuyRadio.com.
There you go.
That's my man. He's been really instrumental in bringing this music, my music to the forefront. So I love you, Pat Quinn, by the way.
He's
Also,
by the way, hey Bear, by the way,
Sir Henry of WVON.
Yep.
Sir Henry Cheatham.
Yep.
First guy that ever played a Bear Williams song on any radio. Thank you so much, Henry. Love it. And then also Katie Lowe over at Rhythm and Flow.
Yeah.
But anyway, the songs. Yes, I did do all of the lyrics, the melody, of the arrangement, along with my guys, Ricky and Herman, and then Bill. But the most of the ideas came from me. We brought them in and we all flushed them out, and what we have is the result of the record.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to my live band here in Chicago. Bill Bricky and Alton Smith and Chris Winters, and my wife Dee, she sings with me, as well as my bonus daughter Dana and her fiance Lucas. I can say that now. And we also had the great Clyde Davis on the drums, as well as Kwame Steve Cobb and different other drummers. So shout out to those guys. We couldn't do it without you guys. We love you. So
well,
but getting back to the concept of those records.
Yeah.
Again, we wanted to do the blues, but we wanted, again, elevated, not taking away from what the blues already is, because it doesn't need any elevation. It is what it is. But our concept or our thought was what if we fused some elements together? We're not the first to do that. I mean, people have been doing that a while, but put our spin on it, my spin on it, and that's where the music came from. So it does have the song "Waters of Love." It does have a definite country blues feel to it. Feels like a country and western song. "No Love" on the "Waters of Love" album. It has a sort of a traditional blues thing to it, but kind of takes a turn.
Yeah.
takes a kind of a rock edge turn to it. So there's a few different things. We try to have fun with it.
But those are all music influences that make up Bear Williams, and that makes sense, right? So that's how it comes out. You're telling your story in the midst of telling all these other stories, and I think that's that one little point that a lot of musicians, it just takes years to get to that point where you can actually play your own music and feel like this is your own voice. And listening to this stuff and watching those videos and stuff, I can tell this is Bear Williams. It's great.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate it.
Well, Bear, it's been great having you on the show. And by the way, you can't see the comments, but I will tell you this. Pat Quinn, kudos to my dear friend Bear Williams. So he commented already.
Awesome. Very cool.
There you go. So
Love
we're gonna tell everybody, go over to BearWilliamsMusic.com. And Bear, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I'm looking forward to connecting with you again, hopefully in person, live somewhere.
Absolutely, Mike.
This has been great. Keep me posted on everything you have happening, and hopefully we will see you out performing live somewhere in a club sooner rather than later. Fingers crossed.
You too, my friend. Keep us moving.
That's right. That's right. All right, Bear, have a good one.
Yeah, take care.
Bear Williams. Wow. I'm telling you, man, we could have talked probably for another 2 hours. I didn't even go down the road to start talking about Mavis Staples and the Staples Singers. I mean, he toured with them for 5 years. He just kind of mentioned it. I mean, but that's because he's played with all these people. It's incredible. So I'm so happy we got to hook up with him. That's the beauty of this show, Chicago Music Revealed. I get to talk to all these different incredible musicians from Chicago, New York, LA, across the world, across the entire world, actually. I had Guy on, 3 weeks ago from Brazil. So, I mean, we're all connecting. So if you have somebody that maybe I should touch base with, maybe we should get on the schedule, maybe we should talk with, or if you are that person, hit us up, leave us a comment, leave us a message. But I'm going to encourage everybody, go over to BearWilliamsMusic.com. Check it out. He's got both releases up there. They're under GVR Records. You will not be disappointed. And also, if you get a chance, do a YouTube search for Bear Williams or Larry Kimball and Kimpel, Kimpel. I'm so used to calling him Bear. Sorry. So do a search for that, and you're going to find some incredible stuff on YouTube too, man. He is killing it, period. End of story. Okay. So tomorrow, we are going to have a great show tomorrow. We got J.D. Walter on tomorrow. We're going to be talking about all of his brand new recording that's coming out. Actually, it just came out, so we're going to be talking about that. And we're going to be talking about Wayne Powers and performing live with the Shout Section Big Band on Thursday. And then Petra Van Naus will be on Friday. So that's the lineup for the rest of this week. 6 p.m. right here on Chicago Music Revealed. Every day, Monday through Friday. And as I always say, if you like what you're hearing, please like it. Please share it. Tell your family, tell your neighbors, call the grandkids every single day here, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m., Chicago Music Revealed. Thank you for watching. Hopefully, we'll see you tomorrow, or hopefully you will see me tomorrow right here on the broadcast. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you then.